Okay, this is the lecture on Chapter 2 for Illustrator. Due to constraints on my time, I am not going to be working through the tutorial for you. I am going to simply talk about the important points in the chapter that may come up in your final exam. If you have problems with the tutorial, get stuck somewhere, you can email me and let me know, and I can do a quick little video for that section that you're having problems with and post that for you. But otherwise, I don't plan on working any more of the tutorials for you. I'm just going to talk about the important parts of the chapters and then leave the tutorials for you to work on your own. This chapter talks about creating text and gradients. In the chapter, you're going to learn how to create and format text, flow text into objects, position text on a path, create colors and gradients, apply colors and gradients to your text, adjust a gradient, and create a drop shadow and apply gradients to strokes. When it comes to creating compelling and dramatic display text, no other software package offers the graphic sophistication you'll find with Illustrator. You can quickly change fonts, font size, leading, and other text attributes with the character panel. You can make tracking and kerning measurements with a level of precision that would satisfy even the most meticulous typographer. For the designer, Illustrator is the preeminent choice for typography. It has powerful type tools, offer the ability to fill objects with text, position text on curved or straight lines, and set type vertically, one letter on top of the next. Okay, once your text is positioned, the Create Outlines command changes the fonts to vector graphics that you can manipulate as you would any other object. Alright, and then a gradient is a graduated blend between two or more colors used to fill an object or multiple objects. Illustrator's sophistication for creating gradients and its ease of use for applying them to objects are a dream come true for a designer. You can create linear or radial gradients between multiple colors, then control the way they fill an object. Moreover, a single gradient can be used to fill multiple objects simultaneously. The unique gradient fills that you create can be saved with descriptive names, then imported into other Illustrator documents to be used again and again. When you create and format text, use the Type tool, and then you click the artboard and start typing, or click and drag the Type tool to create a text box and then start typing. You can use the Vertical Type tool to create vertical type. Type is positioned on what we call a baseline. The character and paragraph panels contain all classic commands for formatting. The character panel modifies text attributes such as font and type size, tracking, and kerning. And this shows your character panel and where everything is positioned on the character panel. Tracking inserts uniform space between characters. It to affect the width of selected words or an entire block of text. Kerning is used to affect the space between any two characters and is particularly useful for improving the appearance of headlines and other display text. And here it shows examples of tracking and kerning. Alright, leading inserts vertical space between baselines. You can adjust the leading, which is the vertical space between your baselines, or apply a horizontal or vertical scale, which compresses or expands selected type. And this here shows your sample baselines. It shows leading. It shows a 50% horizontal scale, a 50% vertical scale there to the text. This shows your paragraph panel and where your attributes, your space after paragraph, space before, first line indent, right indent, alignment, and your left indent boxes are there on your paragraph panel. And then in 12, you can hide objects while working with text to avoid accidental deletions and modifications. The hide show all selection commands are on the object menu. And then starting on page 2-6, you have the first part of your tutorial that you need to work through, working through some of these concepts of working with text. And then the lecture picks back up over on page 2-10 on lesson 2. We'll start talking about filling an object with text. You use the area type tool and vertical area type tool to flow text into any shape that you create. Format text in an object as you would usually. Select the text and choose your formatting. Manipulate the object just like any other object. And this shows an example of a star with text flowed into it. Using the path type tools, again, it will pick up with a tutorial to let you flow text into an object starting on page 2-12. You'll complete that section and we'll pick up with lesson 3, which is positioning text on a path on page 2-14. It's lesson 3. You type along a straight or curved path using the type on a path tool or vertical type on a path tool, and then you move text along the path to position it exactly like you want it. You can flip text to make it run in the opposite direction on the opposite side of the path. You can change the baseline shift to modify the distance the text baseline is above or below your path. And then here it shows text on a curved path there, and then it flipped to the opposite side of the path. Alright, and then it will pick up and show you how to do an example of this on page 2-16, and you'll work through that. And then it picks up in lesson 4 on 2-18 with creating colors and gradients. You can create colors and gradients. A gradient is a graduated blend between colors. You can create and adjust gradients in the gradient panel. And here it shows your gradient panel. You have your type, linear or radial, your 2-color gradient, your rotation, your gradient slider there, and it shows the 2 stops, start and end. You have your opacity and your location text boxes there in your gradient panel. The gradient slider represents the gradient being created. Gradients contain at least 2 colors. Your leftmost is your starting and your rightmost is your ending, and it showed it there as your 2 color stops. House-shaped icons called stops represent the colors in the gradient. The point at which 2 colors meet in equal measure is called the midpoint. The midpoint is represented by the diamond above the slider, which is called the gradient slider. The midpoint need not be positioned evenly between start and end. To change the look of the gradient by moving your gradient slider. Swatches panel contains standard gradients that come with Illustrator, and then of course you can create your own. This shows a linear and a radial, examples of each. Linear gradients can be positioned left to right and up or down. On an angle, you can change the angle in the angle text box on your gradient panel. Radial gradients start at the center of the gradient and blend out to the ending color. And then there in the color panel is where you move your sliders to mix new colors for fills, strokes, and gradients. The color panel has 5 color modes: CMYK, RGB, grayscale, hue, saturation, and brightness, and the web safe RGB. The default is CMYK or RGB depending on the mode selected. You can add colors and gradients to your swatches panel that you define by dragging them into the swatches panel. To name a swatch, you can double click it, then type a name in the swatch options dialog box that pops up. And here it shows your swatches and your color and your gradient panels, another example of those. It picks up here with the tutorial on page 2-20, and you'll need to go through and work with the gradients over those next couple of pages. And then we'll move on to lesson 5, which is applying colors and gradients to text. By default, text is generated with a black fill and no stroke. You use the type tool to change the fill or stroke of individual characters in a text object. You use the selection tool to select text as a single object and to change text globally. To fill text with a gradient, you must convert the text to outlines. You select the text and click the Create Outlines command on the Type menu. Letter forms become standard Illustrator objects with anchor points and paths. And here it shows it's separated into outlines, and then each outline is filled with the gradient. It picks up here with the tutorial on page 2-26, and you work through that and create an outline and add a gradient. And then we pick up with lesson 6 on page 2-28, which is adjusting your gradient and creating a drop shadow. Creating outlines makes it possible to create documents with text without fonts. Okay. Once text is converted to outlines, you can no longer change the typeface. You use the gradient tool to manipulate gradient fills. You select an object with a gradient fill, drag the gradient tool over the object. Where you begin dragging and where you end determines the length of the blend from starting to ending color. The gradient control bar appears in the object itself, as you can see here in the image, and you can change the direction, length, and angle of the gradient control bar by dragging it around. For linear gradients, the angle you drag determines the angle that the blend fills the object. If you select multiple objects, each object is filled with the entire length of the gradient from beginning color to end color. When you convert text to outlines and apply a fill, the gradient automatically fills each letter independently. Examples of different angles and lengths of a gradient fill are shown here in the image. And you create these using the gradient tool. And then to apply a drop shadow, you copy your text, paste it behind it, fill the copy with a dark color such as black or navy, as long as it's darker than the text so that you can see it. And then you use your keyboard arrows to move it to an offset from the original so that you can see the shadow. And you can just slightly see a black or a dark blue shadow behind that pasting back. You pick up here with the chapter tutorial that has you adjust your gradient and create a drop shadow there on page 2-32. Alright, when you work through that, then we're going to pick up with lesson 7, and it talks about applying gradients to strokes. You can use the gradient panel to apply a gradient to the stroke of an object with 3 options: within, along, and across. The within is shown here. The gradient moves left or right across the object. The along is shown in this image. The gradient moves clockwise around the object. And then across is shown in this image. The gradient radiates from the outside to the inside of the stroke. Alright, and then it picks up with a tutorial and has you apply some gradients to strokes. And then that ends chapter 2 for Illustrator. Like I said, work through the tutorial on your own. Let me know if you have questions. If you get stuck with something and you need me to do a demonstration video, just let me know which section and what pages, and I can do you a short video and post it for you if you're stuck.